In court, my brother Ethan pointed at me and told the judge, "My sister, a Green Beret officer, has lost her mind. He wanted to strip me of my honor, my freedom, my entire life." But he didn't know that his crazy little sister had brought a sealed envelope with a Pentagon arrest warrant. My name is Riley Carter. I was 35 and sat in a place I swore I'd never belong. Courtroom, witness stand. Fayetteville courthouse air was thick with ancient wood polish and attention you could practically taste. Hands folded in lap, knuckles white. I wore a dark navy suit, my civilian clothes, a sharp, structured contrast to the spectacle before me. As my brother Ethan addressed the judge, his reflection shone in the polished lectern wood. Success was shown in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than my first automobile. In a modest Chanel outfit, his wife Vanessa Blake sat in the first row, a beautiful statue of concern. Ethan carefully adjusted his silk tie, demonstrating his complete control. I felt sick as he began his well-rehearsed statement with a practiced grief. He stared at the judge, but occasionally he glanced at me with harsh condescending pity. He said, "I love my sister, Your Honor," echoing, "in the quiet room. I stand here today because of that horrible love." He stopped, letting his alleged load hang on the court. War trauma is dreadful. It altered her. My known sister was taken. Not our Riley anymore. Heart didn't break. My chest chilled like ice. He was transforming my life into a sad tale with him as the reluctant hero. The weapon followed. Ethan's suave lawyer from Raleigh, whose smile never reached his eyes, called the clerk. The prosecution offers its first evidence. The enormous wall screen flickered with hazy, shaky cell phone footage. I wandered the Deepu National Forest alone. It was night, and just the moon shone through the thick pines. My lips moved and my voice murmured. The shaky, invasive camera angle was filmed without my consent. Ethan recounted the scene in a mournful voice. "Honor, she talks to herself. Nighttime wandering in the woods lasts hours. Ghosts from her past haunt her." Ghosts. He dared name them ghosts. It wasn't disclosed to the court that the footage was filmed on Corporal Marcus Diaz's death anniversary. He never explained that I wasn't talking to myself. A sacred personal rite was performed, breathing their names into the night. Diaz, Jake Harper, Eric Zhang, men from my battalion who never returned. A prayer and roll call for the dead. The only way I could preserve their memory from silence. I caught a glimpse of Vanessa Blake delicately blotting a fake tear with a silk handkerchief. Performance-perfect crocodile tears. They turned my deepest sadness, my honor, and my pain into a sign of crazy. They portrayed me as fragile and weak, to be manipulated. Final devastating blow was yet to come. A hefty stack of papers was placed on the judge's bench with a quiet thud that sounded like a gavel in the still room. A psychiatric examination was displayed on top. Carrie, Vanessa Blake's family's upscale suburb near Raleigh, was the clinic's letterhead. I had never met the doctor who signed it. I could read the words from afar. Damning clinical phrases jumped off the paper. Personality disorder borderline. Systemic delusions. Severe PTSD may cause paranoia. My identity was nailed with each phrase. Watching the judge's expression, his demeanor changed from hard professionalism to a sluggish, creeping doubt and pity. I saw him gaze from the report to me and back. Now his glance was different. The room stared differently. Clerk, bailiff, gallery, strangers. Everyone was staring at me. She was seen as unstable, a veteran struggling with deep scars, not Major Riley Carter, a Green Beret. The judge swallowed. His voice softened with disdain for a scared child as he studied me. He spoke softly, "Miss Carter. Have anything to say?" I looked at him. I saw my brother's feigned worry. I gazed at my sister-in-law, who planned this public execution. 1,000 angry responses raged in my head. 1,000 realities scorched my tongue. I remained silent. I sat in absolute stillness. My silence wasn't confession. That was my highest disgust for their foolish play. I anticipated the quiet before the storm. It wasn't his first attempt to eliminate me. It began ages ago. I was transported to a modest timber cottage at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains as the courtroom's silence faded. That house was no home. It was two distinct worlds under one roof. Start with Ethan's world. He was our family's golden kid, crown prince, and pride. Our parents recounted every accomplishment of his, no matter how tiny, to the neighbors over the fence. He kept his first Little League trophy on the mantle like a relic. His summer camp acceptance letter was framed. Every error was quickly hidden with excuses. He hit the fence with Dad's truck. Boys will be boys. You know how they are. The teacher had it in for him after he failed a big exam. In his world, there was always sunlight and approval. Then came my shadow world. I worked twice as hard for half the attention. Curts were given when I brought home a straighter report card. Good. Keep going. When I scored the winning basket in high school basketball, the advice was to avoid injury. Appeared in Ethan's life play as a supporting actress. Mom's comments were a gentle mantra that shaped my youth. You're it, Riley. To care for your sibling, be patient. You'll need to rely on him when he's successful. Support wasn't her goal. She wanted to survive. My goal was to orbit his star. My sharpest memory, which still shatters my heart, is from a night of Thanksgiving. American comforts like roast turkey, cinnamon-dusted sweet potato casserole, and my mother's pumpkin pie filled the house. Sound of the football game on TV and living room laughter. It was holiday perfection, but my heart was frozen. After dinner, my father stood up, cleared his throat, and tapped his glass for attention. Ethan's UNC Chapel Hill contribution was ceremoniously publicized. Walked to the hall closet and returned, holding keys, a used yet clean Ford Mustang. Applause filled the room. Ethan cocky grabbed the keys with a grin. King of the world. I reluctantly took something from my rucksack a few minutes later once the excitement subsided. I had just won a big shiny state science fair gold award. Sustainable agriculture was my winning project over hundreds of students. My palm trembled as I clutched it. My dad took it, he scarcely glanced at it. After a moment of indifference, he clinked it on the table. It was beside a gravy-stained napkin. "That's nice, honey," he murmured, emotionless. "However, this won't help you locate a good husband." He pointed with his chin at the unwashed dishes in the Kit Eric Zhang. "Now be a good girl and go help your mother with that mess." I saw at Ethan. He leaned back in his chair, swirling the remainder of his iced tea in his glass with a smug grin. When I disappeared, I felt it. A ghost in my home, I was invisible. Only serving his brilliance validates my existence. The medal on the table mocked me as a symbol of an unimportant achievement. That was the breaking point for me. My choice to enter the army with the intention of joining the Special Forces. Forces was the day I started war on their life plan. The reaction was instant and explosive. My mother cried. "Nice girls shouldn't go there." She wailed like I joined a gang. Dad smashed his hand on the dinner table, making the silverware jump. "Riley, you're embarrassing this family. You hear me?" Ethan cut hardest and festered for years. He took me into the hallway. His low voice, snake-like whisper to drown out our parents. He screamed, "What do you think you're doing playing Rambo?" With hate. "Riley, you're a country girl. Failure awaits you. Wash out and slither back here with your tail between your legs. Don't expect me to pick you up." That threat didn't work. That was promised. I vowed to break the curse. Never crawl again. I would never let him break me. I had to leave. They wrote my destiny not just from that mansion. But a question lingered as I left. Where did I belong if not family? I couldn't answer that question comfortably. It was hell-forged. In particular, Robin Sage, the final tough exam for Special Forces hopefuls. Set in the harsh North Carolina. Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg, was my new home, far from my family's judgment. One of few women in the program. I carried an 80-pound rucksack like men twice my size. It required walking miles through wet swamps at night. Thick humidity felt like breathing water. It required learning to subsist with a bar knife and whatever the soil gave. I woke up in my bed every morning, caught with a protesting body. All muscles ached. My head was fatigued and my feet were blistered in my soaking boots. The professors observed me skeptically, their attitudes a constant challenge, as if waiting for me to break. Ethan's voice tormented me, whispering, "You're going to fail." Others' doubt was more blatant. Now I recall, one afternoon during a land navigation exercise, a huge Californian teammate looked me in the eye and said, "This isn't the place for you, Carter. Go home and cook." My belly ached, but I didn't respond. I didn't argue. Not defending myself. I fell silent, clutching my compass's cool metal until my knuckles were white. My solution would be action, not words. A minor error occurred later that night, put our team off course. Panic set in when the moon disappeared behind dense clouds. Despite the arguments, I stayed quiet, trusting my training. I examined the stars, terrain, and wind changes. Using my keen observation and abilities, found the right bearing. We returned safely to the rendezvous spot before daybreak after I led them through the darkness. Never said, "I didn't have to warn you." I just stared at the soldier, instructed me to go home. I saw grudging respect in his worn, dirt-stained face. It was my first true success, one with calm tenacity and a never-say-die attitude. Despite creating a new self, my previous existence would haunt me. After a 72-hour survival exercise without sleep, I returned to my tent covered in dirt and grime. My sudden, unexplainable want to hear a familiar voice, so I summoned my meager energy to phone home. Mom picked up. My exhausted voice hoarse. I assured her I had passed one of my hardest tests. She didn't seem to hear me. Not hearing the words. Her concern was immediate but misguided. "Oh, honey, are you eating enough?" she worriedly questioned. A girl can't look so thin and dark from the sun. Who would want you like that? She shifted the topic before I could grasp her words' sting. Ethan and Vanessa Blake just returned from the Caribbean. Their time was amazing. Happy she looks. Riley may have wonderful news shortly. As I held the phone, the base camp sounds faded into a muffled cacophony. My typical chest pain was hung up. Lived in another planet. A world where my life and death fights were unimportant. Vacation. Imagine my victories were invisible. My typical chest pain was hung up. Lived in another planet. But in the mud and tiredness, I realized I wasn't alone. After years of heat and mud, I discovered them. My family. My family wasn't blood. Born in northern Syria's dust and peril, it was a decision. Shared risk and respect seal the link, not genetics. Here I was, realized what belonging meant. I recall one night with clarity that still makes me choke. A dusty, isolated outpost of sandbags and improvised buildings under a starry sky was where I was. A mortar assault earlier that day still electrified the air. The boom rattled more than compound walls. It released the nightmares from the IED blast that destroyed my field career and sent me to a desk. Sitting alone in the improvised mess hall, a tent with folding tables and diesel fuel smell. I was drinking lukewarm, grainy coffee. I tried to control my trembling palms. I was fighting my silent war within my thoughts to keep myself together. My commanding officer, Major Colton Briggs, entered. He was a calm, sturdy Colorado mountain man with sight-worn eyes that were nevertheless kind. He never asked if I was fine. He didn't provide any of the unhelpful platitudes individuals use when they're hurting. He poured himself a cup of horrible coffee, brought a chair across from my table, and sat down. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. He told me a terrible story about the first time he went deep-sea fishing off the Outer Banks in North Carolina and fed the sharks his meal. His tone was deadpan. The punchline and timing were poor. I didn't laugh, but my chest's chilly knot loosened slightly. We sat for over an hour, the silence between his rambling anecdotes more meaningful than any talk. In that calm place, I felt something I had always wanted: silent acceptance and deep comprehension. Performance wasn't required. No explanation needed for my ghosts. I was allowed to be. I found that family. The family exhibited its love by little sacred gestures of unity, not spectacular announcements. My 33rd birthday was at another deserted base. I expected the day to be dominated by the scorching sun and fine dust that went everywhere. My brothers and crew surprised me that night. They scraped flour and jam packets from their MREs and military meals. Soldiers' creativity had developed a cake-like object. They inserted an empty .50 caliber bullet casing into the lumpy, thick construct as a candle. A solitary lantern lit their faces as they gathered around me in our tent and sang the most off-key tone-deaf happy birthday I had ever heard. Beautiful. Corporal Marcus Diaz, the Texas-born, endlessly optimistic boy with a great heart, gave me his present. Rock was smooth and flat, scooped up off the desert floor. I closed my hand around the cool stone. It was the most thoughtful, meaningful birthday present I had ever received. In that moment, surrounded by bombs and bullets, I knew I was home. These men didn't share my bloodline, but they held my heart. They saw me not as a woman or an officer, but as one of their own. A letter from Ethan arrived through the military mail system. It felt like a discordant note in a perfect symphony. My heart leaped when I saw his familiar sloping handwriting on the envelope. I was starved for a real connection to my old life. I hoped for words of encouragement, a simple question about my safety, anything to bridge the gap between my two worlds. I have a friend who's looking to invest in the reconstruction sector over there. He's a good guy, just trying to do some good in the world. I was wondering, do you know which supply routes are the most secure? Or if there are any local contractors that are particularly reliable? At the time, cocooned in my unit's trust, my guard was completely down. The information he wanted innocently and freely. Glad to feel useful to him for once. I had no idea I wasn't helping a friend. I was unknowingly providing intel to someone with selfish motives, a predator circling a war zone, waiting to pick the bones clean. That letter, which I had read as a sign of his interest, was actually the first brick in his betrayal. Have you ever been so happy and accepted by your chosen family that you let your guard down and forgot the ones who hurt you? I didn't realize it until years later when my phone rang and Vanessa Blake, her voice dripping with fake concern, told me she was worried about my troubling state of mind and that she had to talk to. After my medical discharge, I returned to Fayetteville, North Carolina, with visible and intangible scars. Before unpacking, I drove to the old house at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I needed to stand on solid ground on the one piece of earth that had always been my family's. But when I turned onto the familiar gravel road, my heart seized. Stuck into the front lawn st. A strange minivan was parked in the driveway, its back hatch open as a young family I'd never seen unloaded boxes. The world tilted on its axis. My hands were shaking as I dialed Ethan's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice infuriatingly casual. "Oh, that," he said when I asked him, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You gave me power of attorney when you were at Walter Reed. Don't recall? You said you didn't want the burden of the house anymore." I froze. I knew from bone deep that I had never signed such a thing, but his voice was so calm and certain, and my memory, fractured and unreliable from the TBI, was a landscape of fog and shadows. The doctors had warned me about memory gaps. Ethan knew he was using my injury as a weapon against me, planting a terrible seed of doubt. "It will be good for you, Riley, to get out, to start reintegrating into life again," she cooed. I agreed like a fool starved for any semblance of family connection. Vanessa Blake immediately took my arm and led me around her circle of wealthy friends. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my sister-in-law Riley," she said, her smile dripping with manufactured sympathy. "She's just returned from her service. She's a hero, but she's been through plenty. We must be patient and understanding with her." I stood there smiling stiffly, feeling my skin crawl. She treated me like a fragile child, a wounded patient who needed special care. They looked at me with morbid curiosity and condescending concern, as if I were an exhibit at a zoo. I was Vanessa Blake's personal charity case, a way to show her compassion and generosity. A week later, Ethan and Vanessa Blake brought a Whole Foods gift basket full of organic snacks and expensive juices to my small Fayetteville apartment. "We're really worried about you, Riley," Ethan said, placing a heavy proprietary hand on my shoulder. "You can't do this alone," Vanessa Blake whispered. "There's a great specialist, a family friend. He could help you." I agreed because I was exhausted and vulnerable. The meeting was at a quiet corner table in a Starbucks designed to feel informal and safe. The man was kind and asked gentle questions about my service, my losses, and the feeling of being lost between two worlds. I told him about Marcus Diaz and the nightmares. I laid my soul bare on that coffee-stained table. I never saw the tiny recording device resting by his phone. I had no idea that every vulnerable word, every pained confession was being captured. I didn't know that my grief would be edited, my words twisted, my trauma reframed in Wepo. The final proof of their campaign arrived a month later in the form of a thick, formal envelope delivered by certified mail with a court summons. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in October, a crisp autumn chill that did nothing to cool the sudden fire in my veins. Thick formal envelope delivered by the mailman, the kind that only brings bad news. Inside was the court summons. I sank onto my sofa, the papers trembling in my hand, my heart pounding a frantic, suffocating rhythm against my ribs. I read every word, the cold, dry legally, A stark contrast to the boiling fury rising inside me. Clinical terms, a grotesque mockery of my reality. It was all there in black and white, a meticulously crafted legal assault. Every sweet word from Vanessa Blake, every concerned visit from Ethan, every calculated gesture of kindness was part of this. An organized campaign to strip me of my autonomy. House. They wanted my life. They wanted to erase Major Riley Carter and leave nothing but a hollow, pitiful shell they could control. A broken toy to be put away on a shelf. As if on cue, summoned by my rage. My phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it and then a cold calm washed over me. I answered. Commands without pretense. You have the papers? Riley signed the inheritance waiver, he said without greeting or prelude. Make it easy for everyone. Consider it my assistance. My harsh laugh was choked. Helping me? You call this aiding? Helping you. Your health is poor. Need someone to watch you. No, I stated little but rock solid. No signature. So when the beast he disguised beneath costly suits and beautiful smiles escaped. Don't you dare act so high and mighty, he yelled, his voice blasting through the phone, tearing my ear. You've been through a lot, Riley. But you're fragile, and this family can't carry your weight anymore. If it weren't for me cleaning up your messes, you'd be nothing. You should be on your knees thanking me for even bothering with you. His words hung in the air of my small apartment, invisible but toxic. Broken soldier, burden damaged. He had taken my service, my sacrifice, my deepest source of pride, the very thing I had built myself upon when he and my parents left me with nothing. He turned it into something shameful. I looked up at the mantelpiece above my small, unused fireplace and saw the American flag that had draped Corporal Marcus Diaz's casket folded into a perfect crisp triangle. I walked over to it, my step steady, my purpose clear. I reached out and traced the rough texture of the embroidered. Marcus had died for that oath. I had lived for it. I remembered the day I took it. My hand raised, my voice clear and strong. I remembered the words etched into my soul that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Domestic. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. Was a domestic enemy, an enemy to my freedom, honor, and identity. He was trying to destroy everything I had fought to protect and everything Marcus had died for. My hot, chaotic rage cooled and solidified, becoming a cold, sharp, and focused block of ice. There were no more tears or pain. Things. Tell them what to do and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I was going to write my own rules of engagement. I wouldn't let him win. I calmly pulled out my phone to call my real family. I scrolled through my contacts, hovering over Colonel Maya Patel. Sharma at SOCOM headquarters in Tampa, Florida, was not panicked. The grief and rage had cooled into a laser-focused objective. I spoke to her as I was trained to deliver an intelligence report. Clear, concise, and emotionless. Colonel, this is Major Carter. I have credible reason to believe that a U.S. citizen has gained unauthorized access to secure SOCOM systems using my credentials to engage in military contract fraud, trying to legally neutralize me through a petition of incompetence. I could picture her in her office, her posture straight, her mind processing every word. Then her voice came back solid and unwavering without a hint of doubt. My small Fayetteville apartment became a tactical operations center with the curtains drawn and my Kit Eric Zhang table full of laptops, documents, and half-empty cups of black coffee. Adrenaline and caffeine were my fuel. With the remote support of the truth is the most effective weapon. I wasn't going to fight Ethan with lies or tricks. I was going to dismantle his world with cold, hard, undeniable facts. The work was grueling. I spent hours tracing IP addresses, following digital breadcrumbs that led from my stolen credentials back to a server route. I cross-referenced flight manifests with login times and painstakingly combed Ethan's social media for inconsistencies. I started digging into his finances and peeled back his carefully constructed empire. With the help of the forensics team, we unraveled a complex web of Delaware shell companies designed to launder money from fraudulent government contracts. Searching old emails, photos, anything that could connect the dots. The most painful discovery came late one night, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, a digital timestamp. Ethan had accessed the secure military logistics system, using my login details on the 5th anniversary of our parents' death. I remembered I was stationed in Afghanistan and overwhelmed with homesickness and grief. I missed them, how lonely I felt so far from home. And while I was pouring my heart out to him, he was on the other side of the world using my vulnerability to commit his crimes. He was stealing from the same government I was serving, using my name as his key. The betrayal was so profound, so personal, it took my breath away. But I didn't cry. I just saved the access log as another piece of evidence. Served at a supply depot in Syria, a man I'd only known as Gunny had contacted Major Rohr. He'd always felt something was off about a shipping manifest from years ago, so he'd kept a personal copy. He emailed it to me. I opened the file. A shipping invoice with my forged signature at the bottom detailed a large shipment of critical medical supplies, including quick clot combat gauze. One of Ethan's shell companies authorized a last-minute diversion of the cargo to a non-military drop point. My blood ran cold because I knew the manifest's date. It was the day our patrol was ambushed. We were desperately short on trauma supplies. I held Marcus Diaz in my arms as he bled out because we didn't have enough gauze. Brother in arms. My fight was no longer for my name or my freedom. It was for Marcus. I printed everything: the shell company's financial reports, the IP logs, the damning shipping manifest, and SOCOM's official letter opening an investigation. Page after page, I stacked the evidence of Ethan's treason on my table. I sealed it tightly and took a roll of red evidence over the red tape sealing the thick manila envelope. Inside was my 14 years of service, justice for the men who had fallen beside me, and the final end to Ethan's lies. We were back in the courtroom, still full of anticipation. After Ethan's tearful performance, his slick rally lawyer rose to his feet, smoothed his suit jacket, and addressed the judge. With this undeniable evidence of Miss Carter's tragic decline, it's clear that my client has acted only out of profound love and concern. It's also clear that Miss Carter is not competent to represent herself or her own best interests. He paused for dramatic effect, letting his words hang in the air. Family today. The judge, an elderly man with sad eyes, seemed convinced. He nodded slowly, his gaze softening with empathy as he stared at me. He bought their entire narrative. He turned to me, his voice soothing, like if speaking to a confused kid. This is your last opportunity. Do you have any response to this motion? The court felt. All eyes were on me. Their expectations were tears, a desperate plea, and franticness. Explosion, a final collapse that would prove their story. I regarded Ethan and Vanessa Blake. They were staring at me like winners who have captured their prey. I said nothing. Instead, I gently unlatched my leather suitcase. My steps were deliberate and slow. The heavy brown manila envelope was reassuring in my palm as I drew it out. I moved it forward on the table in front of me, moving it across the glossy surface. Would toward Bafe. Your Honor, I responded, breaking the quiet with a clear voice. I want to prove this. The judge frowned, visibly annoyed. Unexpectedly, this interrupted his clean conclusion, but procedure was procedure. He snatched the packet from the Bafe, sighing. He impatiently opened the seal. He glanced at the first item, a financial statement, without changing his attitude. But then he turned to page 2. His eyes expanded. He spotted the U.S. Special Operations Command seal. His demeanor changed instantaneously. Instant focus replaced impatience. His reading accelerated. He turned the pages with trembling fingers after drumming aimlessly on his desk. I watched his face go from annoyance to astonishment, disbelief, then frightened realization. Finally, his expression calmed, a fierce anger. He looked up from the papers and at my brother, ignoring me. Ethan looked apprehensive when the room changed. Bang! The judge's gavel smashing echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Bailiff, lock the doors to this courtroom. No one enters. No one leaves, he said, his voice booming with power. The enormous double doors at the back of the courtroom opened as the latch closed. 12 green berets in full combat attire entered the room. Silent, methodical movement drew the air from the area. The judge, lawyers, and startled gallery spectators were ignored. They formed an impassable green and brown wall behind my chair in perfect configuration. Their power was natural. From their ranks emerged Major Colton Briggs. He strode up, saluted the judge, and faced me. Brother. The chamber was electrified with awful, exquisite justice. Ethan Vance, Major Rohr said. his authoritative voice echoing throughout the room. A Department of Defense and FBI investigation into False Claims Act violations, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to defraud the U.S. led to your detention. Ethan's face blanched. The color drained from him like a clog pulled. This is ridiculous, he stammered, gawking at Roar and the judge. She's mad. Her story is fabricated. He choked on his words. He was done in this play. Vanessa Blake sputtered, her silk handkerchief fluttering from her numb fingers to the floor. Her perfectly composed world had smashed into a million fragments. 2 military police officers that arrived with the infantry advanced. One read Ethan his Miranda rights in a calm monotone tone while the other takes his arm, turns him around and ties his wrists. Click. The courtroom's startled hush was broken by a harsh metallic sound. Quite cold. Final. The sound was a trap closing. The justice sound. As they dragged him away, his fine outfit seemed like a costume. He looked at me one last time. There was desperate, begging perplexity. He never envisaged a world without him in charge. The last time you called me your little sister, Ethan, I said, my voice steady and clear, speaking for the first time since this all began. You were lying then, too. After Ethan was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom fell silent. The drama was over. The performance had crashed. In the front row, Vanessa Blake collapsed into her chair. Watch my brother's retreating as he was escorted out. A cheap suit became his prison uniform. My mission was complete. I stood, turned to Major Roar and the 12 silent soldiers behind me, and gave them a grateful nod. Then I walked out of the courtroom alone, the heavy doors closing behind me with a soft thud. Every soldier knows, the profound ringing quiet after the battle is won. Victory always smells like gunpowder and loss. This one was no different. It was the cost of severing a part of myself even if it was poisoned. I didn't go home. I got in my car and drove east, away from the courthouse in Fayetteville. Smell of salt and sea. I ended up in Emerald Isle, a familiar stretch of the North Carolina coast. I took off my shoes and sat on the cool, damp sand, watching the relentless rhythm of the waves crashing onto the shore, one after another, as if trying to wash the world clean. I let the sound fill my emptiness. A week later, my lawyer sent me a thick manila envelope with the official documents transferring the deed of my parents' house. I was wrong. The letter was a masterpiece of cowardice, a manifesto of blame shifting. Dearest Riley, it began. I don't know what to say. I feel so deceived. Ethan painted such a different, frightening picture of your condition. As his wife, family from what he told me was an inevitable ruin. He manipulated me just as he manipulated you. She took no responsibility for the lies, the Tea Party humiliation, or the role she played so well. The final sentence was the pinnacle of her shamelessness. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive your brother. Cold clinical pity for a woman so dedicated to her own victimhood. I slowly crumpled the thick, expensive paper in my fist, the sharp edges digging into my palm until it was a tight ball. I walked to the Kit Eriksjong and threw it away. A few days later, I returned from a quiet ceremony at the Pentagon, where I was formally decorated for my contributions. My phone rang with an unknown number. I knew her voice was full of fake sobs. Riley, please, she cried. I need to talk to you for the children. They ask about their uncle. Ethan made a terrible mistake, but he's your brother. I let her speak, suffering her excuses and pleads without effect. Her remarks were now meaningless chatter from a dead channel. I spoke when she stopped crying and took a breath. My breath was deep and steady. I speak calmly and without malice. The voice was a commander making an unchangeable judgment. I told Vanessa Blake, you're no longer my family. Never call me again. Before she could react, I hung up and blocked her number. This wasn't hate. Survival was the goal. I read in the calm days after the trial. I discovered Nee Brown's writing about vulnerability, courage, and owning your narrative. She wrote, true courage wasn't fearlessness. Face your story's truth. My Ethan and Vanessa Blake story ended in sorrow and betrayal. Rereading my life's chapters prevented me from writing new ones. That book needed to be closed forever. I owned the old house again, the deed on my coffee table a silent witness to my victory. The house returned, but not the family. I peered out at the peaceful street and setting sun, throwing deep shadows on the lawn where a sold sign formerly stood. I realized I may never have had a family. Maybe that was okay. I could have bought a Raleigh luxury condo with skyline views and concierge service with the lawsuit compensation. I could have went anywhere, started over, and left North Carolina and its shadows. So I headed home. I returned to the Blue Ridge Mountain foothills plot. But I did not reconstruct the house. Too many sad recollections tarnished its basis. I gutted it and started over. Built something new. Built the Overwatch outpost. It was a succession of basic, pleasant timber cabins with broad porches and enormous windows that overlooked the Rockies' spectacular undulating peaks. Nobody had to attend therapy or have a clinical evaluation. Fresh mountain air, hot coffee, and comfort abounded. Armchairs surrounding a massive stone fireplace. People appreciated the stillness, knowing that sometimes the best thing is to not say. It was meant as a safe space for veterans to breathe and take off their armor without criticism. I worked that land daily. I grew vegetables, repaired fences, and stacked firewood for winter. I developed calluses, soiled with home soil. First time in my life my soul felt clean. Science calls it post-traumatic growth. It holds that overcoming misfortune can transform you. I lived proof. Now my scars were more than agony. A map brought me here. From a small soundproofed compartment in the main cabin, I launched my late-night podcast. Called it Watch. I had no script or notes for the first broadcast. I sat at the microphone and talked from the heart. I described being told your pain isn't real. I discussed being called crazy, weaponizing a diagnosis, and the survival value of silence. I said, my voice low and steady, if you've ever been told that what you hold inside is an illusion, that your memories are a fabrication, and that your sadness is an overreaction, I want you to know this. See you. Trust you. You're not alone. My email overflowed the next morning. Emails came from throughout the nation. Veterans from Vietnam to Iraq share their memories. Women and men who have silently suffered for decades. They told me about Ethan and Vanessa Blakes, who ignored their invisible wounds. They felt heard and seen for the first time. I sat on the main cabin porch before daybreak, covered in a blanket with a warm coffee, of tea in my palms. I watched the sun slowly rise, painting the dark Blue Ridge Mountains in pink and orange. The outpost's youngest Marine, a Fallujah veteran, sat on the chair next to me after speaking only 2 words all week. We watched the day unfold in quiet for a long time. He silently pointed to a wooden plaque I had set above the entrance. It was verse from my theme through the worst moments was Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. I've been there, Major. Voice raspy from disuse. But I think I'm finally on the other side. I smiled at him for the first time. I had a tranquil, steady feeling instead of hollowness, warmth. Me too, brother, I whispered. Ethan tried to remove me too. He attempted to destroy me till I was nothing. Finally, his lies and abuse helped me find my calling. He removed my family but gave me a much larger one. That's my narrative, or the portion that taught me the most. My mission today is to listen, not simply communicate. If my journey touched you, if you felt your anguish or truth ignored, this is for you. Your tale matters. I'm convinced. Please share your story in the comments below. Someone needs to know they're not alone. If you believe these stories are powerful, subscribe to the channel. Build this community together.